Today's video is sponsored by Incogni. Question: do you have any idea who's got your information? I'm betting you don't. You're surfing the internet or shopping online, you click a thing that says accept cookies, and it all sounds very nice, doesn't it? But before you know it, the websites you visit have sold your data to some shady broker, or there's a data breach, and before you know it, all sorts of sinister people know about your embarrassing medical problem, Judith. Or your terrible credit score, Steve. And Joey, I have no idea why you're filling a bathtub with margarine, but it's weird, Joey. It's weird. Good thing Incogni exists. Fun fact, companies legally do have to delete your data if requested, but they don't make it easy to request it. That's what Incogni is for. They automatically send out emails to data brokers demanding your data is removed, and maybe the brokers are all like, no, you have to fill out a bunch of forms or something, and Incogni are all like, no we don't. This was my screen within literally a minute of signing up. Like 82 emails sent out. That's how quick it is. If that wasn't enough, Incogni have a special money-off offer for viewers of this channel, which will no doubt be most welcome if they have other things they'd rather be spending their money on, like that weirdo Joey. The first 100 people to click on the link in the description below and enter the code HAZARD, with 2 Zs, will get 20% off their subscription. That's an excellent offer, far better than what Steve got from that loan company. Anyway, that's how you can automatically protect yourself against identity theft. Now for a video about trying to discover an identity. Recently, I took a dear friend of mine to North Woolwich in East London because we have a shared interest in industrial dereliction. I mean, I'm not saying that's the only reason to go to North Woolwich, just that it's a pretty good place if that's what you're into. Also, we wanted to ride the ferry because the ferry is great. We had a look at North Woolwich Station. I see that since my last visit they've started dismantling the old canopy, which makes me sad. We discovered the ferry wasn't running because Google lied to me. It's okay, we took the foot tunnel. But before that, we discovered something strange. On Henley Road, just beyond the ferry pier, there's an odd little, I guess you'd call it a park or a garden perhaps? I don't know. This thing literally does not appear on the map. At least not on OpenStreetMap. Someone went to a lot of effort to build, plant and landscape this place, and then they seemingly abandoned it. I can't find any recent references to it online, and older references don't really have anything to say about it. But it's right there. It's not locked up or hidden or anything. You can even see it from the ferry. What particularly caught my eye was this. It's a rail-mounted crane, and vandalism aside, it looks pretty well preserved for something that's been sitting beside the tidal river, exposed to the weather, apparently without maintenance, for at least 35 years. But what's the story behind it? Why is it here? Who built it? Where did it come from? I suppose I could just write to Newham Council, and maybe I will. But for the time being, I thought I'd do a bit of detective work. North Woolwich is part of the old London Docklands, and there is a pair of anchors in the park to remind us of this. So I guess this crane is also part of local history. It has no builder's plate, which makes things difficult. When it comes to cranes, I can't tell my Ransoms and Rapier from my Stotherton Pit. I think it was likely once fitted with a cab, and based on the size, I think it's likely that it would also have been steam-powered. Maybe even self-propelled. A few people suggested to me that it was something to do with North Woolwich Station. I think this is unlikely. It just doesn't look like a railway crane to my eyes. Too small for a breakdown crane, too big for a yard crane. Not really the right shape to be either. Besides, photos I've seen indicate that North Woolwich had a much smaller fixed crane for goods. Where railways used cranes like this one, it was usually at a locomotive depot or works. I did use my phone to measure the gauge between the rails, and that seemed to think it was a little over 5 feet. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, probably not very, but if it is correct, or at least broadly correct, this can't be a railway crane. Well, I mean, it is a crane that is on a railway, obviously, but not a crane used on the railway network, if you know what I mean. Another reference online said that it was used in the docks for moving lightweight loads, but there's no further information, and I frankly think that whoever wrote that was guessing. Dockside cranes in London tended on the whole to be pretty huge because ships using the docks were similarly pretty huge. This crane would simply not be able to reach into the cargo ships of the Royal Docks. So my next port of call, so to speak, was to look into local industries. And I think I may have found something. One of the largest employers around here was Harland and Wolff. Harland and Wolff were one of the biggest shipbuilding companies in Britain, and I mean that in both senses. They were one of the biggest companies that built ships, and they built some of the biggest ships. If you've heard of them, it might well be because of their Belfast yard, which built the Titanic and her sister ships. But it wasn't all ocean liners. They built vessels of all sizes, and even tried their hand at railway locomotives. Harland and Wolff arrived in North Woolwich in 1924, 3 years after the opening of the neighbouring King George V dock. They were a relative latecomer to the Thames, most of the other shipbuilders having arrived in the 19th century. They lasted here less than 50 years, moving out in 1972. By that time, the docks as a whole were in terminal decline, so there was little call for a shipbuilder. The yard in North Woolwich wasn't quite on the scale of Belfast, but it was nevertheless a very large site. The biggest shipyard in London, in fact. It was primarily intended for repair of ships rather than construction, but its position on the Thames, with its access to the canal network, meant that they found plenty of work building narrowboats for the Grand Union Canal Carrying Company. In fact, the boats they built here were known as the Small Woolwich and Big Woolwich class. They specialised in building smaller craft in general, but there were plenty of industries around here that made use of their metalworking facilities. Even Ford at Dagenham subcontracted them. There was an extensive network of railways there, as you would expect for a heavy industry at the time. Some connected to the Port of London Authority's rail network, whose track you can still see by King George V station. In fact, H&W performed maintenance on the Port of London locomotives. And if we look at this photo from Britain from above, we do indeed see a number of cranes that look like our boy. Cranes like this were ideally suited for this sort of industry, being compact but powerful. Assuming my measurements are accurate, which again is a big assumption, our boy was likely used on the foreshore, where temporary tracks could be laid on the mud. And if we look at this photo here, source unknown I'm afraid, we see a pair of cranes of about the size of our fellow lifting a narrowboat. Not the same model of crane, but it does at least show that this was a use that cranes like this were put to. So, is this our answer? Is this a Harland and Wolff crane? Truth be told, I still don't know. This is just an educated hypothesis. Maybe that's the origin of our crane, maybe it's from a different yard, or maybe the council just got a crane free from somewhere and put it there because they thought it looked about right. But in the absence of any easily available useful information, that's the best I have. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. My throat's a bit funny, so I hope my voice wasn't too off. If you did enjoy it, please do leave a like and subscribe for more. If I find an answer to the questions not really answered in this video, I may well return to this subject. If you know anything more about the crane or the garden-type thing it sits in, I would be very grateful if you'd let me know in the comments below, or via email. Thanks as always to my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. You are the cable to my jib. Thanks also to Incogni for their kind sponsorship of this video. And I'll see you all again very soon. Cheerio.